Developing the Leader Within podcast, leading beyond limits.
Welcome back, everyone. If you haven't subscribed, please do so right now, as it'll help getting our show to others and help us get to our next milestone. I hope you all had a great Christmas and enjoyed family. Today is our final show of the year, and I'm excited to be speaking with Guillermo Diaz Jr. Guillermo is the founder and CEO of Conectado Inc., an innovative Web3 AI digital platform with the mission to accelerate access to the opportunities for those that are underrepresented. He most recently served as the chairman of Hispanic Technology Council, High Tech, and he is a Navy veteran, and I'm so proud of that. Guillermo, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. And yeah, go Navy. We beat Army this year.
That's
Again.
right. That's right. Everybody was like, oh, it
Dude.
was a nail biter, but we won.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't matter in the end. But it was good because it's like one of those games where it's competitive, but at the same time, there's a lot of brotherhood, right? Just like right on this call.
Outstanding. Yeah, that's true. At the end of it all, we're on the same team, same
That's
fight.
right.
Now, folks, we
That's
will be
right.
speaking about the leadership advantage, leveraging information technology for strategic impact. Now, before we get into that, Guillermo, tell us a little bit about you that maybe the folks may not know.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I'm here with, it's interesting. It's winter time, but in sunny San Diego, California. And it's interesting because I started my journey here in San Diego and sort of sunsetting here in San Diego because I'm originally from this place called Pueblo, Colorado, where I'm very proud to be, from my parents. My dad was from Mexico City. My mom was born in the Mexican camps in southern Colorado, and that's where they met in Pueblo. And so I grew up in Pueblo at 17, went to the Navy because we didn't have a lot of money to go to school. So I went, that was my route. I was going to get my college degree. So that was my route to, as you know, right? It was like we do what we have to do. But what's interesting is when I went into the Navy, uh, what I learned of several different things. One is about the job that I went into was technology. It was really about wireless. It was about security. It was about technology, which we didn't grow up learning that stuff, so we didn't know much about it. But that was one thing. But the other was that I grew up in a very Hispanic community. So it was, when you go to the Navy, it's other. You have to learn how to acclimate to other cultures. So that cultural intelligence was a key learning for me. And then, the other is around just leadership and being away from home. We're very close to our families, and when you go out there and you're out there in the middle of the sea, sometimes all alone, feels like you learn resilience and you learn new things that deep inside make you stronger. So getting out of the Navy was I ended up in Alameda, California. That's where my ship was based. And Alameda is so where the Bay Area. So I was in the right place at the right time with the skills that I had around technology. So Silicon Valley was my first job getting out of the Navy. And so I ended up there, was able to finish my degree and then got recruited by a company called Silicon Graphics. And SGI was was one of the darlings of Silicon Valley at the time. It's kind of like if you took NVIDIA, um, Dell, and sort of Adobe and put them together. That was Silicon Graphics at the time. And then I was there for, just right around Y2K. I got recruited by this company called Cisco. And so ended up there at Cisco from right around year 2000 to 2020 when I left. I was there 21 years and ended up growing from a managerial position, going in as a junior manager and leaving as the chief information officer at Cisco. So there's that, and then I in parallel, as you mentioned earlier, I was chair and helped grow an organization called High Tech. Was involved a lot in the Hispanic community, especially in Silicon Valley, but broadly in the nationally and internationally to a large degree. And then really, when I left Cisco, was how do I bring all of those things together? How do I leverage the background and where I came from, learning about technology and growing into roles at the C level, ultimately getting onto boards and really taking advantage of that sort of that journey and that roadmap to go say, well, hey, if I could do it, why can't our community do it? And let's bring up and let's start laying the foundation. And so I founded Conectado, which is really about how do you bring that a learner, a student from where I came from or from where we come from, to the resources, to the people, to the mentors, and to the businesses that will ultimately hire them. So that connected tissue, that connected conectado is really how I founded the organization, and that's what we're working on now.
And I love the mission. Obviously, you came from Colorado, Hispanic centered. You got into the Navy, it was diverse. I grew up in the Bronx, New York, right? So although it was Hispanic centered, it was diverse everywhere you saw. So it wasn't such a drastic adaptation for me. But nonetheless, coming from Hispanic backgrounds, there is a culture thing around that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily expose us to things like technology. We were like, put your head down, work hard, don't make noise too much, just get
Yeah,
through, and
yeah,
hopefully you retire and you go to your casita somewhere
yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
retire, right?
No, that's right. And when you're in Pueblo, it's like you there is it's very few leave because it's such a tight knit community, and it's like you kind of don't leave, and when you do stay, there's really we had the back when I was growing up, we had the steel mills in Pueblo. It was one of like the little Pittsburgh of the West, and so that's where everybody worked, or in a government kind of job. And unfortunately, well, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, that part of Colorado, that southern Colorado, is where the prison systems are most heavily, where they built the prison systems. So, like, very, like the most dangerous criminals are in prisons in near or around Pueblo. And so that's a lot of what the industry was, and and now we're really looking at, and I was just there yesterday, by the way, visiting. And one of the things that we're looking at in Pueblo is creating an AI academy to then become a feeder system into the university, which then now they're looking at creating a hyperscale data center near or around Pueblo. So then it just becomes a great pipeline from the K system all the way to the university system, right? Walking out and getting a job in artificial intelligence or something that is connected that way, right?
And I love that. And you mentioned AI, obviously part of the technology world right now as we are living it. But from your
Right.
perspective, how should leaders shift their mindset about information technology in general, from
Yeah.
a support function to a strategic enabler, especially in today's rapidly changing corporate environment?
I mean, if you look at it, every job especially going forward from here now, right? Things will never be as slow as they are right now, which is very fast. So just think about that, right? Things will never be as slow as they are today, right this moment. So they're only going to get faster. And they're only going to get faster because the world is enabled and will become more enabled through technology. Whatever job that you're in, whether it's in actually technology or you're in finance or in healthcare, which are two of my industries that I'm on boards on, or in services, like I'm on the board of Jack in the Box. So technology is a key component to how you deliver to your consumers. So every job will have a technology component. So if you are in technology or in the technology field, you have to really think about it's not just the old IT, organization anymore. It's like you now really have to understand, how are you delivering the the innovation? How are you delivering the experience? But also how you're doing that with very, along the lines of governance and risk. So it's a balance, right? It's you as the technology specialist have to change your mindset from I was the IT person or information technology to I'm a business technology leader. And I happen to be integrating those two things, business and technology, to help accelerate my business. Because if you don't, you're just going to be like, if you remember when everybody moved to the cloud. Well, there's a reason why people moved to the cloud is because IT was looked at as a roadblock. And I know this because I was the CIO of a, you know, Fortune Fortune 50 company. And, if you don't enable the business, they'll just go around you. You just become obsolete. You might still be there in salary and spirit, but the reality is people went to the cloud because they looked at IT as an obstacle. IT's too slow. So let's move to the cloud and go faster, right?
Yeah, and even in the military, you was in IT, I was AG, totally separate. I was doing weather, oceanography. You guys were, computers and servers and all
Yeah.
that. But today, the way the Navy is structured, both of those fields are put together in what we call
Hmm.
information dominance.
Yeah.
And that was because it was information sharing. And it made sense that if these two entities were together, now there are other three or four coupled in that because the Crippies are in there as well. And so the Navy saw that coming. Hey, before this becomes obsolete, let's make this funnel into what we would dub information dominance. But you
Yeah.
mentioned AI. Obviously, we're surrounded by it. I couldn't go through a drive through without dealing with an AI agent somewhere,
Hmm.
either
Hmm.
ordering food or whatnot. But with AI automation and data analytics accelerating, as you was mentioning, at an unprecedented speed, what questions should leaders be asking their IT and digital teams to ensure technology is driving business value and not
Yeah.
just innovation from the innovation's sake?
Yeah. I think here's the biggest opportunity for the function or the organization that we know as IT is there's never been a crucial moment for that organization. And here's why I say that is I went through, I mean, I've been through Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, now AI, I've been through all of those. But and every stage you have the IT plays a role in that. I think in the last phase of this digital transformation, IT played a role, but it was almost like kind of like a backseat role because the business took over. You think about this, most, this is why AWS exists. This is why Azure exists, these cloud providers, is because is IT was, it was sort of like providing the infrastructure and they were moving slow. So the business went to AWS, they went to Azure, they went to, the Google Cloud. But here's the interesting part, and I have a lot of data on this if we ever want to dig into it, is as you move to the cloud, what you did is you actually took your data and you dispersed it across many different clouds. And those clouds come in the form of infrastructure, like I mentioned, or they're SaaS providers like Salesforce or Workday or some of these, and you move your data there. Or they're like now you have your LLMs, you have your large language models, you have OpenAI, you have Gemini, and now you're moving. Now there's another set of clouds. So you think about how many clouds there are there. At the same time, you as IT are looked at as we need to make sure that whatever we're doing with AI is secure. So so this is where I think a great opportunity to go now that we've moved a lot to open AIs and Geminis of the world to do training on our models. Now we need to do inference, which is really about how we add value to our business. How do we take those workflows that have been troublesome for us? How do we use AI to help automate that and take 30, 40, 50 steps and make it, that take hours and hours to do and make it into seconds or minutes. And how do you move that back sort of to, it's almost like a wave, right? We're in this wave where we're coming back a little bit more on, I don't know if I want to say on-prem, but we're coming back to a bit more control, because in this new world, we have to have control, because AI, you just don't want it like all over the place. It's hallucinating. It's getting better and better, but you don't want your workflows, out of your control. And so the data, as you dispersed it, you can now bring it back and start to go, I can innovate and keep control and risk and manage the risk. Because as you can attest, more boards, every board now is looking at cyber, they're looking at data, and they're looking at AI. I can tell you that because I sit on the boards of Blue Shield, on Jack in the Box, and several other boards, and they're always asking these questions, right?
Yeah, and that's so powerful as we're talking about the strategic posture of leaders and boards. Cybersecurity, data
Yeah.
privacy, and trust are now board level concerns. How can
Oh yeah.
leaders balance speed and innovation with responsibility and risk management when leveraging modern IT capabilities?
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is, in our board conversations, we tend to, and we have historically tended to focus on risk management and governance. And but at the same time, boards are accountable for shareholder value. So it's sort of, but because we are, more of a governance organization, there's a comfort zone in, working with the cybersecurity team and looking at risk and how many cases and how many hacks are we getting every day. But at the same time, with AI, that's creating a whole new speed and a whole new realm of innovation that we have to keep our eye on. So as we've been looking at the defensive posture for most of our, you know, tenure on our board, now we have to look at the offense. Is like, because if we don't look at AI as on the offense side, there's a company out there right now that will probably disrupt us. And so it's really a balance of that, is how do we make sure that we're looking at both of those, and that we're working hand in hand with our teams, because we're, on a board, and I had to learn this, by the way, coming from being a CIO to being a board member, is you're not the person that rolls up the sleeves anymore. You're the governance, you're governance, and you're adding shareholder value. So we have to work hand in hand and help our leadership teams that are operating the organization. We have to help them see the same vision and the same picture, and work with them, and hear what they're dealing with every day. Because the reality is like there's large organizations, and it's hard to move an aircraft carrier when you're so big. But if you think about it and you say, well, but we're launching aircraft off the aircraft carrier, so go and check out this mission, and go and check out that mission, and come back with that intelligence. And then we start going, okay, how do we go after that opportunity? So we have our defensive posture, but we also need to launch the F-16s and 18s off of the aircraft to go and seek intelligence that we need to keep moving and innovating, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's a hard thing for leaders to start to adapt to this a new level of leadership. Some leaders can't even adapt to the technology that's coming around. So many organizations struggle with technology adoption, and not necessarily technology availability because it's there. So, what role
Mm-hmm.
must leaders play in shaping culture, upskilling teams, and driving alignment so IT investments actually deliver impact?
Yeah, and it's a really good question, because I think your leadership starts with you, right? It's like you have to be an example. Like on our team, we're small and mighty, but we're between 5 and 7 people, depending on what projects we're working on. But we're probably doing the work of 25 people, just because we have we have an AI centric mindset. And I talk about that all the time. It's like, we're doing AI academies. We're teaching about AI literacy and fluency, and what tools to use, etc. And what I talk to my team about is, by the way, we better be using those same tools to drive our business, right? So when I was at Cisco, we called it Cisco on Cisco. How do you use our own technologies to run our business? Because what happens is the customers always came in and asked, well, you're asking us to implement Cisco technologies. What are you doing? And so when we have that story, it's like, well, this is what we're doing. This is how we use our technology. And this is the business enablement that we're driving because of that. This is how we're improving productivity. This is how we're driving, innovation, and then improving the customer experience. And that's what we're, with AI, especially right now, is, you need to 10x your business. And you as a leader need to be showing that, okay, I'm Guillermo, I have GAI, and GAI better be doing 10x of what Guillermo's doing. You still need Guillermo there, but you need to make sure that your business is driving that extra productivity and that extra growth and a better experience. And there's never been a better time than now to use those tools to show not only how your business does it, but you as a leader need to be savvy. You need to, otherwise you're going to be obsolete. You've heard this adage already. With they say it's like AI may not take your job, but somebody that knows AI will take your job. So trust me, if you're not thinking that way, it's going to be a wake up call for you.
Yeah, we know what happens with dead weight.
Yeah,
Sooner or later, you
yeah,
have to
it's true,
cut ties and see them out one door.
and
So,
it's hard, but it's a reality, right?
well, as we're talking about, we're not going to be ever as slow as we are today, right? Because
Hmm.
even as we speak, somebody's working on getting things faster. So, looking ahead, what core capabilities or leadership behaviors will separate organizations that successfully leverage IT as a competitive advantage from those that fall behind in this corporate climate?
I think it's really goes back to what I've been saying is like you're really looking at and think about it on try to make things as simple as possible, right? It's easy to understand because with AI and with all of the tools, with the different large language models, every day there's somebody's delivering something new. OpenAI yesterday, Gemini today, Anthropic tomorrow. It's like you can't keep up. So you got to try to keep as simple as possible and use those technologies. Pick one, pick two, right? And then start learning it and and show that leadership. But I also think is don't make no mistake is that there's these critical thinking skills that you still have to have, right? And I call them the C's, right? Which is what we actually, so in our platform, Conectado, we teach about AI literacy. We teach about health tech literacy, like bioinformatics. But we also have a curriculum around critical skills. And this is like how do you communicate? How do you take those technologies and how do you make it simple to communicate? How do you create those connections? So I call them the C's. How do you develop your improved collaboration? How do you leverage them to really drive the business forward? So really looking at those critical thinking skills, um, how thinking about resiliency, thinking about even how do you show up because so many times when our young students come out of an engineering program or a computer science program, especially now, right, the times are tough, as they come out and then they're like, I still can't get a job, and you start talking to them and they're like they can't articulate their why. They can't articulate why am I good for that job. I always tell them someone's going to do it, why not you? But you need to be able to show up. You need to be able to communicate, articulate why you should be in that job. Just like when you and I had our first job, we didn't like go in there and all of a sudden somebody handed it to us. We had to scratch our way in there, right? Especially as Hispanic. Hate to say that, but I was in the Silicon Valley. I was one of five, maybe, right? And it like growing up in that, it was like, you had to like crawl your way, claw your way in there using how do you communicate? How do you develop those connections? How do you create the collaboration network that will help you grow? And I think those things are really quite needed, right? You need the technology, but you also need those critical skills.
And absolutely, that's one of the things that we often preach to leaders. You cannot be this leader that becomes no longer a resource. You become a
Yeah,
liability, right? And when
yeah.
you let technology escape your grasp, then now you're no longer relevant as a leader
Hmm.
because you can't even guide someone into what's coming up down the road. So
Yeah.
in order for you to do that, you have to be on it. And I think that a lot of leaders are just comfortable where they are. They got the job and they're doing whatever it is, and they don't press forward. And so that's going to be
Yeah.
the differentiator between, having someone that's going to be able to drive you through this change, or someone that's going to be the block, right? And for most of
Yeah.
us, we know that leaders have 1 to 3 jobs at any given time, and inspire your people, equip your people, and remove the roadblocks. If you can do
Yeah.
those three, great. But if technology is changing around you and you lose the grasp of where the people should be going, then you become one of these
Yeah.
outdated.
Yeah. It's a good point. And you need to be able, as a leader, especially now with all of the tools, to be able to hold your own in this technology transformation world, right? Is, that was one of the things I grew up, my degree is in business, but I grew up in the tech. I grew up as a technologist. So as somebody tried to bullshit me, it was like, no, it was I knew enough about what they were talking about to be dangerous, but also to hold myself and to hold them accountable. It's like, no, it's like so you need to be on the in the know about all of those leadership traits that you just talked about, but also making sure that you can hold your own in this technology world. And I think that's going to be a differentiator for those that do.
Absolutely. Now, Guillermo, I love this conversation. I know that we can go all day talking about this, but if the listener or the viewer is wanting more to find out more about you, what do you have coming up, and where
Mhm.
can the viewer or the listener follow or support you?
Yeah. So if you go to Conectado, CONECTADO.com, you'll see, we'll keep updating there. But we are, what we're doing with many different schools, all the way, we started at the universities. Our first partner was Stanford, then it was Berkeley, then it was, a number of other universities. Um, and now we're moving downstream toward, we have partnerships with high schools like Hollister High School in the Bay Area, or the K level. We want to continue to move our way downstreams because, if you look at other countries, they start at the K level. And we need to really start thinking about that, because our world is going to be changing that way. So we're doing our AI academies, which hit students, educators, families, so parents and communities. And now we've recently launched one for business acceleration for small, medium enterprises, and working our way up toward larger enterprises. But we have curriculum around that. And if you're ever interested in that, I would say, you reach out to me. It's simple: g@conectado.com, or go to conectado.com, or look us up on LinkedIn, on Instagram, etc. Right?
Outstanding. Well, folks, we'll have all the links necessary for you to connect with Guillermo, follow what he's doing, and get connected with Conectado. No pun intended there.
Yeah.
But today's episode is sponsored by the Global Trends Magazine, The Outlier Project, Fantail Services, Ascend Meditations, and Chop AI. And if you've enjoyed this episode and learned something interesting about the topic covered today, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let us know by leaving a comment. Tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle. And as we like to end the show, success to you and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.